Hello, everyone. Welcome to Friends and Neighbors. I am Sandra O'Neill with my wonderful co-host, extraordinaire, Sherry
it is I.
Tatum. It's always such a joy to be here with you.
Yes, absolutely.
We get to learn and hear from some wonderful guests.
You know, you hit it on the head right there, Sandra. We get to learn.
We get to learn.
I mean, I have learned so much in the 27 years here. You know, it's priceless.
Yes.
And we have another great guest here that's going to help us today with our parenting.
Absolutely. We have Cecil Taylor with us, coming all the way from Plano, Texas via Zoom. And he is going to be talking about his personal parenting experience. And he has taught families over decades of ministering to so many teens and kids. So we're going to be gleaning information from him and his new book called Unison Parenting, The Comprehensive Guide to Navigating Christian Parenthood with one voice.
Yeah.
Can you match my tone?
Yeah.
You got to match it. Anyway, Cecil, so good to have you here.
Welcome, Cecil Taylor. Yes, thank you for being with us.
Oh, well, thank you. Don't ask me to sing, though, okay?
I won't ask you to match my tone. No, but I am so excited to be talking to you about this guide and just using one voice. Tell me, with all of the parenting books that are out there, what differentiates this one book for us to be able to jump into and take?
Yes, I think some books are based on experience and other parenting books are based on research. Well, I started with both research and experience as a parent and researching different styles, and I went on to teaching parenting classes in my church to over 700 families over 15 years, as well as working with church youth for 30 years. So I brought this research into the situation, had that experience as well, and then I was able to interact with families where they could benefit from the lessons, but then I could benefit from their playback, right? They would tell me what worked, what didn't work. I could present different ideas to them, and I heard a lot of good stories coming out of this. So I feel like this is a parenting book that is based on real lives, real families, and I'm very confident in the material as a result. I think the second thing that's different is this emphasis on unison parenting, kind of unique for a book. Now the book, 80 to 90% of it is just great parenting advice, but there's this undertone, this foundation of how to be on the same page, how to parent in unison. And the model that I use comes from music, unison singing. And I had asked my musician and composer wife, why does a composer write in unison when harmonies are so nice? And she said, it's when you want to emphasize the message or emphasize the text. And that's what we want to do as parents. If we are singing in unison to our child, we're emphasizing the message, so it's a consistent message going to our child.
That's true. Well, you know, growing up, it was kind of funny stories about a child would ask their mother, and she'd say, no, you need to go ask your dad.
That's right.
Well, the dad would say one thing, and then the child didn't like what he said, so he'd go back and tell the mother, and she'd say, oh, yeah, oh, this is what you can do. And so it was not unison. And the child never had a real base for being in unison and doing things right like the parents should have done in the first place. Did you ever find that in all the things you did, the studies?
Oh, Sherry, this is the classic child technique, right? And it happens today. Everybody encounters that. It happened to us. You don't get one answer that you like, so you go to the other one. And so, yeah, you have to have that parenting spidey sense that kind of says, did you ask Mom if you could go over to Jimmy's already? You know, that kind of thing. So you do need to try to be on the same page and have good communication. And these days for parents, there's really no excuse. We can text, right? Say, you know, our child is in a bit of trouble and is not allowed to go see friends this afternoon. Okay, so when you get home, then you say, this is what I understand, buddy. You know, you're not going to be able to go do this, right? So, yeah, and in our household, it violated several of what we called our choices chart, items on our choices chart. To be able to do something like that, it wasn't honoring and conforming to your parents. It was not caring for the rules of the household, these kinds of things. So, woe unto the child that played divide and conquer. And they learned very quickly not to do that.
Well, I wanted to ask the question too. When I was growing up, it was always the father that was the disciplinarian. Has that changed? Should it be both parents that discipline? How does that work? Because I see that we've gone from the father, you know, the mother works, the father works, everybody's working. So who is the main disciplinarian, or is there a main one?
I don't think there's a main one. I think that parents need to co-parent according to a set of rules that they have proactively set up.
Okay.
So what I encourage parents to do is to, first of all, talk about what their core values are as a family, and then to create what I call a proactive parenting plan that says, and it's posted. It says, these are the rules of the house. There's not 100 rules. You try to make just a few rules that are general, but a lot of different things fall underneath them. And you say, these are the rules of the household. These are the consequences for not following the rules. But we also have rewards for different kinds of behaviors. For example, exhibiting the fruits of the Spirit could be one that is a reward, and being able to recognize that in our children. And so when you're doing that, you're consistent with your parenting. It's not wait till your father gets home.
Yeah.
It's this is what we do in our household, and whichever parent is there needs to be the one enforcing it and making sure the consequences are assigned if needed.
So I wondered, though, if you are not in unison parenting, if your parents don't unison, how do you get started in that? How do you start saying, maybe I need to have some commonality here?
Yeah, I think parents are surprised. They think they're together, and they really aren't so much of the time. I was at a book signing where parent after parent would come up and say, you know, we thought we were all together until the kid at age 4 or age 8 or age 12. Whatever it was, there was a crisis point where they realized they really weren't on the same page. I remember one mom in particular thought everything was great until the kid was about 4 and could talk back, and then realized the dad was a strict disciplinarian and she was very lenient.
Yeah.
And boy, did they have problems then, right? So the way you get started is first to realize that a family is a culture clash of other families. You are bringing in how you learned the way the world works from your family. So the values that you had, the assumptions you make about roles or rules or whatever, the things that are embedded that we don't even realize are in there, you bring that into a parenting situation. And so you have to realize, what was our family of origin like? I think there's a lot of discussion, and I have some tools to do that, but there's family of origin discussion is really good to understand where we're coming from. And then, well, what core values do we have? And again, you'll uncover some things that are different, but you set up core values, and from the core values, then you'll be able to create a model for proactive parenting where that gets implemented into the day-to-day strategy.
I have got to ask this question, Sandra, so you'll have to wait. What about, how do you, each child is different.
Yes.
I had 3 daughters. They're now 56, 54, and 52, all married, have children of their own. But when they were younger, I had one that was headstrong, one that was a peacemaker, and one that was a leader. And the parenting like to drove me crazy, my husband and I, because how do you deal with different children, because they're all different? Do you get together with your husband and say, well, you know, so-and-so's like this, how are you going to do this, how are we going to do? I mean, every child is different, aren't they, Cecil?
They are, and fair does not always mean equal.
That's right. That's right.
That's true.
So you have to figure out what's fair for the child. For example, my boys are older. My daughter is the youngest. My two oldest, being boys, they just they were smart, but sometimes didn't apply themselves in school the way I wanted them to. And then my daughter, though, was a very serious student, and they would say, "Why don't you get on her like you got on us?" And I said, "Because she's harder on herself than I could ever be. My job with her is to keep her from getting down on herself when things go wrong." So what I call this is adaptive parenting.
I love that.
Adaptive.
Adaptive parenting that has to do with the different personalities and the different ages they go through. One thing I tell parents is reintroduce yourself to your child every 6 months.
Ooh,
because
I love that.
they're going to change. One example of that is there was a boy I remember in youth group who came from a single mom family, didn't know his dad, was very standoffish, did not want to be touched in any way. He would stand in the corner away from other people. You're having to invite him into the group. One Sunday, he shows up and he's hugging all the girls. And I didn't take that as, the hormones kicked in. But it was more, this is a new person. I need to sit down. And I sat down and talked to him for a little bit, and it was like talking night and day. It wasn't the same person anymore. So your kid is going to change. And the parents need to watch that all the way through the kid's childhood as they're adapting and looking at the little things and the big things. Well, you didn't like ketchup before. Why do you like it now? I like it now, right? And all those things that happen. And I think the adaptive parenting is the place where you as parents can see what works best for each child. It doesn't mean that there's different rules in the household. That's the thing I wouldn't say. But what I would say is the way you approach them, just like my example with my sons and my daughter on the way I talked about the very important topic of schoolwork was very different because of their personalities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I love that you mentioned adaptive parenting, and you have different styles as well in your book. I know as people start aging, first in the toddler years is pretty much more of a cop year. You're like, don't do it. I gotta make sure they're alive and well, and as they start growing, they start changing. But I also love that you mentioned introduce yourself to your child every 6 months. That's gonna stick right here for me. That's awesome. So talk to us.
How do you do that?
How do you, first of all, I wanted to find out about your different parenting styles, right? And does introducing to your child, are there different styles of that as well?
Well, the parenting styles are more at a higher level as a superset that really govern your behavior as a parent. And I think it takes a lot of discipline and maturity and humility of knowing when you've done something wrong to be a parent. So I think you have to look inside yourself and say, am I really parenting in a particular way? So let me set up what the 4 parenting styles are and talk about my own evolution with that. So if you'll imagine a grid that has a couple of boxes that are love, and then on the other side there's a couple of boxes that are limits. So if you are high in love and high in limits, that is the ideal style. It's the loving and firm style. So there's a lot of love, but there's also these boundaries, right? And they're enforced. That doesn't mean it's military or anything, because you can have reasonable conversations at times, but you have boundaries, and they're firm boundaries, and they're known. So if you are low on love and high on limits, that is the dominant parenting style, okay? And that is a very harmful style that does long-term damage to the child. If you flip that around and you're high on love but low on limits, then that's the permissive style. And a lot of the current parenting trends could just fall into this permissive style. And what it leads to is a child not knowing their boundaries. And as a result, you see them in younger years, it's more acting out and not knowing how to behave. In older years, it becomes entitlement. And so there's a lot of problems with that style. And then another, of course, the 4th style is, you can imagine, harmful because it's low on love and low on limits, and that's the neglectful parent who doesn't really pay much attention to the child. I say in the book, I have lines that come out of each parent's mouth. For the neglectful parent, it's blank.
Wow.
Or leave me alone. That's what the neglectful parent does. So we want to be loving and firm parent. However, when I started off, I thought that's what I was. But I realized, I was talking to a friend of mine, I said, I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and they are gaming me. I mean, they are manipulating me. Why is that?
got one more question.
And she said, it's because you're doing that permissive style.
Oh.
And you're not consistent. And I was like, of course I'm consistent.
Consistency is a key.
Consistency. But then I realized when I came home from work, if I was really tired, which was a lot of days, I would do one of two things. I would either be very strict and harsh, more so than other times, and then the other extreme would be, I would be like, I'm too tired to care, just do what you want. So the kids learn to navigate depending on which dad came home and would manipulate me accordingly. So once I embraced the loving and firm style with my wife, because we need to be consistent, we need to use the same style if possible, and that's when you get the best results. The loving and firm style statistically is shown to give the child the best chance at self-esteem, at self-control, and at becoming a mature, independent adult.
Cecil, that's incredible, and I can't believe we're about 1 minute left here, because I really wanted to ask you guidance about teenage years, which I'm walking into, but we don't have time for that. We'll have to have you back for that. Yes, but
we could come back and just talk about teen years.
I would love that. I would love that. Now, how can people connect with you?
Yes, the best way is through my website called unisonparenting.com. And on there, you'll find various tools that I talked about. And the best thing is you can buy the book on, all the major bookseller sites, you know what they are. But come to unisonparenting.com and pick it up there. And I even have a few bonus gifts I throw in with that $10 book.
Thank you so much, Cecil. It's been a wonderful conversation. We will definitely want to have you back to dive into those teenage years. But right now, we are going to be taking a break. So we'll see you back shortly.
Yes.
Welcome back to Friends and Neighbors. We're having a wonderful conversation about parenting. We just spoke with Cecil Taylor from Plano, Texas, and he was sharing his experience behind Unison Parenting. And Sherry, that was really enlightening.
Yes, it was.
To hear.
I had about 40 more questions.
I know. I was like, I had my questions about teenage years.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I am walking into
so
that.
quick. It went so quickly,
Yes. I can't wait to have him back.
Yeah, it'll be good.
But talking about that, share with me, have you experienced, or I know you have, but what have been some of the parenting challenges that you experienced raising three beautiful daughters?
3 daughters. Well, like I said a while ago, it was a lot of estrogen when they were teenagers, and girls can be catty, but girls can be very thoughtful and very sweet.
Yes.
But each one was different. I had 3 daughters that were entirely different. It was like I said on the show, one was so headstrong, another one was the peacemaker, and the other one was the mother figure, the leader. She was the oldest, and she thought they should do what she said. And it was, when they're teenagers, they're coming into their own, and they're coming into their independence, and they're coming into who they'll be. And you have to have a lot of patience, a lot of love, but some firmness, like Cecil said. You have to set boundaries.
Yes.
Especially with 3 daughters.
I love what he said. I know. Did you have any pets? Because I grew up, we're 3 girls too, and my poor dad, because even our cat was a girl. And he was like, can we please just have some kind of testosterone in here? But isn't that hilarious? My poor dad. But, it's one of those things, and I loved what Cecil said about the different parenting styles, that when you do have a lot of love and you then have your limits that are high, then it's a good mixture. But when you're permissive and your love is high, that's when they just run all over you. And you have a lot of children who really are leading the parenting styles.
That's the truth. Well, that's the thing with my youngest daughter. By the time she was in her teenage years, and I had the other.
Were you like, whatever?
Yeah, I was exhausted. It's like Cecil said, he'd come here and say, oh, do whatever. I'm exhausted, And, but you know, all my girls know that I deeply love them, and that I expected certain behaviors out of them. We did have limits, and they couldn't go to certain movies, they couldn't watch certain things on television. And back then it was soap operas, and they were not allowed to watch soap operas, because you're talking about 40 years ago, because they're 56, 54 and 52 now. And
hopefully they don't mind you sharing that.
And the youngest one would say, "You're just too old. You just don't understand. All my friends this, all my friends do that." I said, "If one of your friends jumped off into the river, you're going to jump off with them just because they're doing that? Well, you just don't understand. You'll get some of that, Sandra. But it's just because they're trying to make their own decisions."
Sherry, I'm already getting bruh. And I'm like, I'm your mom. I'm not, she's like, bruh. I'm like, what's a bruh? I mean, I understand what a word, but I'm like, okay, let me try to identify the feeling behind that so that I can define that particular bruh. But but I love it. You know what? Somebody told me this a while ago, someone who has parented before me. They said, do not already expect the worst thing in teenage years. The teenage years are the best years ever.
We had a lot of fun.
And I'm having the best time with her, and we are rubbing each other the wrong way. But ultimately, I do try to remember and remind her that, you know, I'm your mama. And you can call me bruh if you want. I'm a bruh mama to you. And she was like, Mom. I was like, you can call me bruh mama if you want. Or mama bruh. That's the bottom line. You know, but all of that to say challenges are coming, and I can't wait to hear from Cecil about just some guidance behind that. You know, the Bible tells us in Titus, right, that the older generation is to pour into the younger one.
The younger generation.
And I love that sense of guidance, and you can kind of, you know, parent in unison with that. But Sherry, specifically, what challenges do you remember with your children that you can encourage someone else?
I can remember they changed.
Yeah.
Like Cecil said, they started out one way, but they changed. They got better as they got older. They understood where I was coming from and the challenges that I had with 3 daughters. Where, you know, now this was not when they were 13 and 14. This was like when they were 18 and 19, 17. They got older, and they understood that you have to have boundaries. But even though if you have boundaries doesn't make you a mean person, it was for their own good, and they realized that I had this, like I said, you cannot go out of this house wearing certain clothes. And one day I had a challenge on that, and she said, yes, my friends are picking me up, and I'm going. And I said, not dressed like that. And she said, yes, I am. And I said, no, you're not. And I mean, it got pretty rough, but she didn't go, because I said, as long as you put your feet under my table, there will be things that I require. And you know that. And that's just the way it is. It's not that I'm trying to be mean to you, but it's because I love you, and I want to steer you as best I can into adulthood to be, you know, a responsible woman, a woman of worth, as the Bible talks about. And so now they all have daughters, and they say, oh, Mom, they're pulling their hair out, you know, and they say, oh, Mom, I understand even more now how hard that was for you, because, listen, parenting's not easy.
No, it's not.
And you can't just be their buddy, Sandra.
No, that's right.
You know, and a lot of people nowadays just want to be their buddy. You have to be the parent.
It's very interesting that you said that, because you do have to make those challenges, and you can have fun. You have a great time, but when you are consistent with what you allow and you don't allow, and I always say this, remember who you are and whose you are. You are a child of God. That's your identity. That's who is inside of you. So you don't want to grieve them with your actions. Now, we all make mistakes, but we can learn from them, and it's hard. You know, the other thing that I wonder about these years that are challenging, but you know, teenage years are fun years. I'm
Yeah.
just going to say those. So those are fun. You have all these emotions, like when you're all of a sudden finding a cute boy and you're like, should I tell my mom? Should I not? And it's like, you want them to be able to share that with you,
Yeah.
but you also want to be able to be that voice to say, yeah, you can share whatever you want. I heard this one saying from a friend of ours that said 5 seconds of awkwardness.
Of what?
Awkwardness.
Yes.
5 seconds of awkwardness can save you from a lifetime of regret. So that's something I keep saying to Eliana. It's like, let's sit there in this moment. And I said, are you awkward? She's like, I'm getting there, Mom. I was like, okay, let's go. 5, 4. She's like, Mom. I was like, let's sit in the awkwardness. Let's do it.
Yes.
I was like, because if you act in the middle of those 5 seconds, you can do something because your emotions has told you to do it, and then all of a sudden it changes your life entirely. So a friend of ours said that to us a while ago, and I said, wow, okay, let me remember that, so when I do have a child, I can live. I'm just grateful the Lord Jesus has given me the memory to remember that. He does give you those nuggets, but
But I can tell you this: if you love your child and you're there for everything for them, like you are with Eliana, and I tried to be with my girls, but with 3, well, my husband. He was in foreign countries all the time, so it was basically me, myself, and I. But if you're there at practices, if you're there at games, if you're there when they're in a play, or you show up and you show that you care,
you do
that
show.
We're friends today.
I love that.
My girls and I, we're going to Scotland.
I
in a
know,
few
I'm so
months.
excited. I can't wait to hear.
I go on a trip every year.
love it.
Because we're good friends.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
And you know what? I know you love your child, and
Yes.
I pray that you will get connected to the vine, which is Jesus Christ, because through that Holy Spirit, you will be able to know how to love them the way He first loved you. We'll see you
Amen.
next time at
Amen.
Friends and Neighbors. Thank you for
A lot
joining
of
us.
prayer.
Yes.
A lot of prayer.